Hey, I'm Sam from Barn2, and this video is your complete guide to the Document Library Pro plugin. Whether you've just purchased the plugin or you've had it for a while and you're just curious to learn more about it, this video will be your go-to guide. Document Library Pro is one of our best-selling plugins because of how easy it is to create fantastic-looking libraries that organize and display all of your documents. They come with search and filtering options, as well as preview and download capabilities. I'll begin with installation and setup, but feel free to jump ahead to any section of the video using the timestamps on YouTube. As a premium plugin, you'll need to purchase it from our website in order to be able to use it on WordPress. You can find it with the first link below, and as with all our plugins, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. After purchasing the Document Library Pro plugin, you'll get an email with the zip file and a product key for activation. In the WordPress admin, go to Plugins and Add New Plugin, then click Upload Plugin, then drag and drop the zip file that you downloaded. Click Install Now, and then click on Activate Plugin. The first time you install the plugin, the setup wizard will launch, but because I've already installed it once before, I need to go to the settings page. To do that, I can click on the settings button here on the plugin, and then click on Setup Wizard. And seeing as this is a complete setup tutorial, I want to show you the key settings that you'll need to configure and show you what they do. On the first page, paste your license key here and then click Activate. Step 2 is where you'll choose a layout. For smaller libraries, the grid layout would work well, as it displays each document more prominently. For everyone else, the table layout provides a better user experience when searching through the library. You can also enable folders to create this tiered structure. This is something that you can add later, as it requires proper categorization, which I will get into in a moment. Next, we need to define the table columns. There are a lot to choose from, which you can read about with this link on screen here. But honestly, the default setup is already good. But you do need to decide how users can access the documents. This can be with a link, checkboxes, or both. And lazy load is something I'd recommend for big libraries with at least a few hundred items, as it will help with performance. Filters make it easier to find what you're looking for. I recommend choosing custom and adding categories and tags as a comma-separated list. You can also read our knowledge base for more options. At the end of this setup wizard, let's click the link to create our first document. I need to pause for a second and explain what exactly a document is in WordPress. The Document Library Pro plugin creates a custom post type in WordPress called Documents, which you can find in the menu on the left side of the WordPress admin. But for our purposes, that means we can add any kind of document that we like to our website, which could include resources that are available for people to read directly on your website without having to download anything, or downloadable files that are normally stored in the WordPress media library, for example, a PDF, image, or PowerPoint presentation, or really any downloadable file that is stored on a third-party platform like Dropbox, Google Drive, Microsoft SharePoint, or Box. Or it could even be a link to a web page, either on your own website or on a different website. Basically, if you can store it as a file on your computer, you can also upload it to WordPress and share it with our plugin. One more thing. Before you start adding a bunch of documents to your WordPress website, you need to plan the structure of your document library. In other words, what categories and tags are you going to use to keep things organized? Because it's much easier to set this up from the beginning than to go back and retroactively add all these categories and tags later. Now, like I just said, there are two main ways to keep things organized. The first is with categories. You can create hierarchical categories and subcategories structured into unlimited levels. So for example, we have the finance category, and underneath in the subcategory, we have investments. Then there are document tags. You can add tags or labels to each document. For example, you could use tags for the document year, publisher, topic, type, or something else. If you want to create multiple types of labels that are like tags, you can do this with custom taxonomies, although that is kind of advanced and requires at least one other plugin. Your document library can include category and tag columns, as well as the filters that we chose in the setup wizard in the previous section. Now let's talk about the 5 different ways that you can add documents to your library. Each of these methods will store the file in your media library while also creating a post in the document section of the WordPress admin to store the extra information. You can then display all of this information in the front-end document library along with download links. Feel free to use whichever upload method will save you the most time. This will depend on how many files you need to upload and whether or not you already have those files in the WordPress media library. Option 1 is to literally create your new document from scratch in WordPress using the Add New button in the document section. Enter all of the new document data in the same way that you would write a new post in WordPress. This includes the title, an excerpt or description, and the actual document content itself in this text area here. But this could also include images just like any WordPress post. Don't forget to add the document to a category if necessary. You can add new ones with this button here or choose one you've already created. And you can also write in some document tags using this field here. Then you can set a featured image for the document, and you can also update the author. If you don't see some of these options, check the screen elements to make sure all of these items are checked. And that way you'll be able to see everything and edit it as you can see on my screen here. You can also use the file URL option here. At the moment, it's set to no URL, but I could also set a file upload and add it with this button here. Or I could insert a file URL from the web. This could be to a Dropbox link or some other link to a file like a PDF. You can then save a draft or click Publish to immediately add this document to your website. Option 2 is to go to your media library, change the library layout to this table layout, and you can select any files within your media library, and then use the bulk actions option to add them to your document library, and click on this apply button to add those items as documents. You can then return to documents and click on all documents to see which items you just added. You can click on them at any time and edit them just like you edited the first one. Another way to add documents is to go down to the import section, and then you can drag and drop files from your computer to upload them and add them as documents. WordPress will then upload these different items, and you'll see them in your document library. The fourth way to add documents is to go back to the import page and import a CSV file. I recommend downloading our sample spreadsheet so that you can format and add your own data in the same way that the plugin will be able to read it. So you can see there are different columns for all of the different parameters for each document, including a featured image URL if applicable, and a direct URL if needed. You can also add tags as comma-separated values, and you can write in the name of the categories. Then choose this CSV file, click on Continue, and make sure that all of the different column names are mapped correctly. Then click on Run the Importer, and this will import these documents. If you want to delete or remove any documents, you can use the bulk actions, click on Move to Bin and Apply. And finally, option 5 is to create and use a front-end document submission form. This is covered in a whole different tutorial I made here, which is linked in the video cards. No matter what though, be sure to include as much information as possible about the document, including relevant search phrases, document types, and other references. The more time you take when uploading and labeling your documents, the better the user experience will be on the front end. Now it's time for the fun bit, seeing your WordPress document library for the first time. Now I've switched over to a demo site, which has a lot more documents set up, which include categories, tags, author, file types, and a bunch of different demonstrative information to give you a better idea of what this will look like once you've set up your own documents at home. Now to view your document library, you can go to the pages on your site, and by default, the plugin will create a document library page. You can view this to see what the plugin has created. Now, it may not look like this one right away. It depends on how much information you've added about each of your documents, as well as the columns that you've set up. In this case, we have the file type and file size, but you may not have added those to yours as well. Pay attention to the link section where you can see we have a little icon, a button with a preview, as well as a selection box, which we can use to download multiple documents. And I'll show you how to set all this up in these settings in a minute. But if you don't like the name document library, you can always change it to something like resource directory or really anything else you like. So the next step is to go through our document settings. You can do that by going to Documents and clicking on this Settings button. Now these are the global settings, which we can use to control all of the different document libraries which we're displaying on our site, unless they've been set up specifically with shortcodes to override these settings. But that's advanced usage, which I'll cover at the end of this video. Now, of course, we have our license key here, which we can make sure it's active and update it if needed. But otherwise, I'm going to scroll down to here where we have the different link options. So we definitely want to include a link to the documents. And I encourage you to go through each of these settings in your own time and read the descriptions to see what other options you have. But as it's set up by default, it should be pretty good. Now, these fields that you see here are used to store information about your documents. And you can add additional fields using a custom field plugin, which again is a little bit advanced, but it's something that you have the option to do. And then you just check this custom fields option. You can also update which pages are used for the document library and the search results. But again, the default ones set up by the plugin should be good. And here is where you can update the default layout of the document. So I'll just give you an example of what it looks like with the grid layout enabled. And recall that it looks like this with the table layout. After quickly saving my changes and refreshing this page, here's what our library looks like with the grid layout. Now you'll notice that if there is a featured image, it'll show up on the tile. But if there's no featured image, it may just show a preview of the document type or nothing at all. This is manageable in the settings. And if I scroll back up to the top here, you can see that there are category, tag, and file type filters based on the filters that we set up. And you can also limit the number of documents shown per page down at the bottom here. So let's switch back to the table layout. And then I'm also going to show you how it looks when we enable the folders option. There are some sorting options, but in general, I'll show you how the folders look now. When I click on any of these categories that we set up, you can see that the document library table will load. So you can see I can just click on any of these to open them up. This is very similar to navigating files on your computer. And if you have any subcategories, they will also show up underneath here, just like the folders do on your computer. So I'll leave those folders enabled for the moment, and we'll scroll down to Document Preview. I would encourage you to check this box and allow previewing of documents in Lightbox. And you have a few other options here, like the preview text, which you can modify. I'd also encourage you to check these two boxes here. If you don't want to limit the excerpt length, you can put -1, or you can just put any number of words, like 20 words, for example. And again, you can do the same thing with the content if you have a content column enabled. I'd also encourage you to enable search and the reset button. And you can set a limit of documents depending on if you want to have the page load in quicker. That's up to you. There are several more options here, as well as sorting options, which you can modify based on date published, title, or any of these other options. I like title, but it's not always the most useful, so date published can be better so people can see the most recent items first. Then you can also read more about front-end document submission using this link here, or watch the video I made, which is also linked below. Then click on Save Changes. Now you'll notice up here we have the document tables, document grid, and the single document setting pages. So let's start with tables. And here is where we've set up our columns for the table. So at the moment we have title, excerpt, and then this is how we format the categories column, file size, file type, and link. So you notice for categories, we need document categories because WordPress uses categories in other ways. So we need to specify that it's a document category that we need. You can set the image size. The default 70 by 70 is pretty good, but you can make it larger if needed. And recall the links column had both a link to the document as well as the multi-select checkboxes enabled, just to show you how it works. But in your case, it may be better just to choose one of these to avoid any confusion. Like I explained in the setup wizard, you can enable lazy loading, so it'll load the documents one page at a time, which will improve performance. You can also enable caching and the expiry time for that caching, so you can improve performance even more. Now, the search filters are a little bit interesting. Depending on what columns you have enabled in your table, you can just show them based on columns, or you can choose the custom option, which I actually recommend. Then you can list the document categories, tags, and file type, for example. You can do any or all of these, and there are additional ones which you can read about in our knowledge base. Then finally, if you want to modify the design of the table, there are some custom options for things like the borders and colors that the table uses. Now, it is set up to match your theme, so long as you have a good theme enabled, you should find that the table looks pretty good even with the default setting. Then we'll click on Save Changes, and I'll quickly cover some of the options in the grid settings. In general, this is just going to modify what is being displayed in the grid of documents. So I've only enabled the image, title, the excerpt, and the document link. But there are other options too, like if you wanted to include the author name. Once again, there are a few design elements that you can select, like the background color and the background color for the categories. And finally, the single document settings relates to the individual page of each document. This can be disabled on the main settings page, but if you want it to be displayed, you can also choose what things will show up. For example, you may want to enable the download count, which will show how many people have downloaded this document before. Then click on Save Changes. Now remember, the document library is available on your site already, but people won't be able to find it unless you add it to the navigation in your site's menu. So to do that, go to Appearance and Menus. Depending on your theme, this may be a slightly different process, but in general, it should be the same. Click on View All, and you can see these are the document library pages, document library, and you don't actually have to list this document search one, but you can click on Add to Menu, and you can add it as a sub item within any of the other items in your menu, or it can remain as a parent item. Click on Save Menu, and you can refresh your page. And here we've added document library to our menu on our website. You can list documents anywhere on your site by adding this shortcode to any text area or shortcode block. And that will display the library in the way that we set it up using all of the settings. However, if you want to modify this particular document library on this particular page, you can add more options to this shortcode, which will override those global settings. To get you started, here are some examples of popular ways to create unique libraries using shortcodes. In our first example, this is a basic document library that will display all of our documents, but we've selected some specific columns. In our second example, we're defining the columns as well as selecting only documents from a single category, in this case, accounting. And in our third example, we're displaying all documents that are in multiple defined categories, in this case, ebooks plus e-commerce. So here we can see what those tables look like on the front end. In our first example, you can see all of our documents are being displayed with the table columns that we selected and added to our shortcode. Now, if we scroll down to our second option, we're displaying only documents from the accounting category. And further down at the bottom here, you can see there's only one document that belongs to both e-commerce and the ebooks category at the same time. So this table will only show one document. As you might expect, I can't possibly cover every single option available in this plugin in a single video. So please use the links in the description to go to the knowledge base to read about even more advanced features that I didn't have time to cover. If you need any additional help with this plugin, our support staff here at Barn2 are amazing and they're always ready to help you. Just go to the support page on our website, which you can also find linked below. You might also be interested in keeping your document library private or adding a password to protect it. If so, you can check out this video next to learn how to set that up. And of course, thanks for watching.